Welcome inside the War Room. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we're back today for episode 68 of the Dynasty War Room podcast. On today's show, we are going to break down the NFC North division. We have some buys, sells, sleepers, and breakouts with a full division preview. So all four teams will be covered today as we get into the summer. And as always, before we get into the show, make sure you are following this podcast on your platform of choice. We are on everything out there, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it, we're there. So go make sure you're following the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And find us on social media. We mentioned the YouTube channel at Dynasty War Room. You can find us there on Twitter or X at Dynasty War Room as well. And you can find our Facebook page. You can find me on both Twitter and Blue Sky at Andrew V. Court. So follow along, ask us some questions. We're always happy to interact. And let's just move on into today's show and talk about the NFC North. So we last year started with the AFC North in our divisional previews. This year we're going to start with the NFC and kick things off with the NFC North. And we're going to do things a little bit differently. Certainly some similarities, but I want to focus a little bit more on some of the sleepers, breakouts, the buying, the selling, that sort of thing, instead of just going too into the weeds on the entire depth chart offensively for each of these teams. So we're going to start in alphabetical order, with the Chicago Bears. And before we do, I want to tell all of you about my friends over at Fast Draft. It's a new fantasy football, best ball app that you can go to and use my code WARROOM when you sign up. And if you deposit anything up to $50, you'll get a deposit match. So if you put in $50, you'll get an additional $50 from Fast Draft to compete in all kinds of different drafts. Picks are only 20 seconds on the clock, so you can get through a draft in just a few minutes. And it's a really great way to stay active here in the summer and get ready for the fall season. So again, code WARROOM when you download Fast Draft today. All right, so let's talk about the Chicago Bears. So we'll go down position by position, mention the players, their current value, how they're being viewed on a site such as Keep Trade Cut, and then I'll talk about what I expect from the team, and then as we get through the division, we're going to discuss my buy candidates, my sells, sleepers for this year, and then breakouts, and we'll define those a little bit differently. I know sleeper and breakout can be kind of similar, but I think sleeper is really more of a true under-the-radar name that is not being talked about, a little bit further down your draft rankings, whereas breakouts could be more of a player that's highly ranked, that is, going to have the best year of their career or kind of really break out, hit the main stage in terms of fantasy football. And I think buying and selling players kind of speaks for itself in terms of, what you're trying to do with the player. So we'll kick things off with the Bears. At quarterback, Caleb Williams. He is the QB number 8 on Keep Trade Cut, the 22nd player overall. And he is obviously entering a big season. New coach, new coordinators, just an entirely new system with an offensive-minded head coach in Ben Johnson. And he's going to have some weapons. At running back, he's got DeAndre Swift, who's the RB28, player 129 overall. Roschon Johnson, who is the RB58. And then Kyle Monangai, a rookie out of Rutgers, 7th rounder, running back 68. At wide receiver, DJ Moore, who's the wide receiver 30, the 89th player overall. Rome Odunze is the wide receiver 19 and the number 58 player overall. Luther Burden, another rookie coming in the 2nd round this year out of Missouri. He is the wide receiver 34 and 94 overall. And then Olamide Zacharias. It's a tough name to pronounce, and I probably just entirely butchered that. But he's the only player that's got a last name that starts ZACC. So you can find him on Sleeper if you really want to add him as the wide receiver 4 on this squad. But I don't think he's going to have much of a huge role. I don't really think you need to worry about that. I'm going to focus my attention on more of the fantasy relevant players. And included in that are the 2 tight ends. So a little bit different than most teams. Both Colston Loveland, who's the tight end 4 and 56th player overall, and then Cole Kmet, the tight end 29 and the 201st player overall, I think will be relevant for fantasy, which might just be a one-year thing for Cole Kmet as Loveland works his way in, but I do think that it could be a little bit of a slow start for Loveland just given some of the injury issues that he's had this offseason, so I don't think you should get rid of Cole Kmet quite yet if you have him on a Dynasty roster. But just overall for this Bears team, I mean, the expectations are sky high. Obviously, they have a great wide receiver room. They had a really good wide receiver group last year. And then the running backs, there's some potential here. I think it's a little bit more up in the air. And the offense is going to have to work through Caleb Williams in the passing game because with these types of weapons, I mean, DJ Moore is still an elite wide receiver. Rome Odunze has, all the hype in the world. And despite his, solid but not special rookie season, his value has not really taken a hit at all. Luther Burden getting brought in was a really good player at Missouri. And then Loveland coming out of Michigan, first-round pick. So there's a good reason for the expectations in Chicago. There's been some talk on this show that I made a big trade for Caleb Williams in a league. I think I got a pretty good deal in that. And Caleb Williams has a lot of questions that he needs to answer. He's taken a lot of sacks. He looked really off at times last year. But I think we did see the flashes of that potential, the reason he went first overall. So this should be the year that he can really take that next step and show that he can be a top 10 quarterback in this league and can be a top 10 fantasy quarterback, which, if you're taking him at QB8 is what you're looking for. So I really like a couple things about this team in terms of its dynasty value. I've talked a lot about Colston Loveland throughout the draft process. I think he can be a really good tight end and can ultimately end up being a really reliable weapon in this passing offense. I still do like DJ Moore. I think he's actually a little bit undervalued right now. Wide receiver 30 and 89th overall is, I think, that's to me more of his floor. I get that he's a little bit older in terms of his age at 28, but he still has a couple good, solid years left. He's been a reliable, productive player over the years, although a bit underwhelming, I guess you could say at times. I think there was a lot of hope and expectations that he would break out sooner, but he's had a lot of issues throughout the years with quarterback play. Rome Odunze, I think, is being valued a little bit too high at the moment. I don't want to go quite as far as saying he's going to be terrible or, you have to trade him away at all costs. He's somebody that I think could fit on a sell list, and I talked about him as much several weeks ago on this podcast because I do think you can get a ton for Rome Odunze right now, and I just don't know that the current valuation of wide receiver 19 really gets there. There's a lot of projection going on, and now Luther Burden is getting brought in, Colston Loveland is there, DJ Moore is still around. I just have a hard time seeing Rome Odunze breaking out and being this team's wide receiver 1 this year. I just don't think that's in the cards. I think he will be a very solid wide receiver 2 on this squad, but Luther Burden is going to take some receptions away. Colston Loveland is going to take some receptions away. DJ Moore is still going to be good. So it's a bit crowded. Lots of talent, but someone is going to be a disappointment for fantasy. And at the moment, given their current rankings and how much it would cost to acquire them, I think you're more than likely to be a bit disappointed by Rome Odunze this year. But you could get some nice value with DJ Moore. And then DeAndre Swift, I think, has actually turned into a somewhat solid value. I talked a little while back how much I liked Roschon Johnson coming out this year as the potential number 2, David Montgomery type of back in Ben Johnson's system. And given how cheap he is to acquire right now, you can get him for a late third-round pick. I think that's well worth it, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later. But and same with Kyle Monangai. If you want to stash him, as an undrafted free agent or get him in the 4th round of your rookie drafts, if you have any that are still ongoing, I'm perfectly fine with it because there is room for another running back to have a sizable workload next to DeAndre Swift. But Swift right now is being valued under somebody like David Montgomery. He is the current lead running back on this team that should be an upper tier offense. And so I do think there's some value here. Now, I don't know that it's going to be long term. I do think that the Bears probably will upgrade that running back position next year. But in terms of redraft or a player that you can buy for a relatively affordable price and still get good production, I think DeAndre Swift could actually be that guy, despite me in the past not being a huge fan. I think that the price has come down to the point where it's much easier for me to buy in where he is right now. All right, team number 2 in the NFC North, the reigning division champions, the Detroit Lions, who are led at quarterback by Jared Goff. He is QB 21 and the 74th player overall on Keep Trade Cut. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds in the running back room. Jahmyr Gibbs is the number 2 overall running back and number 10 overall player in Dynasty right now, according to Keep Trade Cut. David Montgomery, the running back 23, number 114 overall. And then at the wide receiver position, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has been steady and awesome throughout the years now here in Detroit. Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, Isaac Tesla, rounding out that room, Cleve Raymond there as well. And St. Brown is the wide receiver 7 currently on Keep Trade Cut, number 16 overall. Jameson Williams, the wide receiver 23 and the 73rd overall player. And then Patrick and Tesla, both, way much further down the board. Tesla is wide receiver 79. Tim Patrick, wide receiver 164. So we're getting, way far down the board here. But some solid sleeper potential, certainly at least as a stash for someone like Isaac Tesla. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta, solid, steady, number 3 overall tight end and the 33rd player on the board on Keep Trade Cut. And he's backed up by Brock Wright. And the Lions, I think, are still the division favorites. I'm still expecting them to win that division despite a very difficult schedule this year. But I don't know that the offense will be quite as elite as it was last year. I still think it's a top 10 offense, still going to be very good squad overall, great for fantasy. But I think just a minor step back could have a fairly large impact on some of these names. So the Lions lost Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center, arguably the best center in the league, certainly top 3 at the position. That's going to hurt. I do think that the team can replace him a bit, albeit maybe in the aggregate, but they got some nice rookies that are entering the mix, a couple free agent signings. So we'll see how they work things out. But I do think that's going to hurt David Montgomery, who's more of the early down grinder. I think it could hurt Jared Goff a bit if he faces more pressure, because we've seen during his time in the league that when he has time, Jared Goff is great. He can find the open receiver. He's accurate, very smart player, not uber athletic, but he's still very capable, solid starting quarterback, especially when he has time. But when he gets blitzed, it's, I don't want to say it's, as bad as a Sam Darnold against the blitz, but there's certainly a noticeable step back with Jared Goff against heavy blitzes. And of course, he's benefited from having an elite offensive line. But if the line takes a small step back, I think that hurts him a little bit. I think it hurts Montgomery, like I mentioned. I think that having new coordinators on both sides of the ball will definitely have an impact, although I don't think it's going to be quite as big of an impact as you might think. But again, just a small downgrade on the offense is going to hurt some of these guys. However, the one player that I think is going to take a step forward and be even better than they were last year in terms of their value is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that he is just locked and loaded. He could very much be the number 1 overall running back. He could be the number 1 overall dynasty running back. Currently, the consensus is at number 2. I've gone back and forth with him being at number 1 and number 2 in my running back rankings throughout the offseason. At the moment, I think he's back down to 2 behind Bijan Robinson because of the Ragnow news, but it's very much a 1A, 1B type of situation. I don't have a strong feeling on one or the other at this point. But I do think that we could see an offense where Gibbs becomes more of the true elite starter, getting more of the carries, more of the time on the field, having a role in the passing attack. And that's going to take some of those opportunities away from David Montgomery, which is why I still think that Montgomery can be a solid player, but you're very touchdown dependent, and I'm just a little bit more worried about that this year. Whereas in the passing game, Amon-Ra St. Brown, elite wide receiver, one of the best in the entire league. But again, we could be seeing, if he doesn't maintain that touchdown rate, tiny step back for him, which would make that wide receiver 7 ranking, I think, pretty much spot on. I think I still currently have him at least 1 or 2 spots ahead of that. He's right in the mix to me with, it's him and Puka really, are kind of neck and neck for me. And I think most people, CeeDee Lamb is probably a spot ahead. I would put Malik Neighbors ahead of St. Brown, but, very good player. Obviously, you know what you're going to get for the most part with him. Jameson Williams is a really interesting player in terms of his dynasty value because he had a very nice season, had a lot of boom weeks, but he's not very consistent. He is entering an important season in terms of his contract, where the team is going to have to make a decision in terms of 5th-year option and extension, the whole 9 yards there. I think the real question is whether or not he's going to get a contract extension from the Lions. There's been some speculation that he will, some speculation that he won't. It's really all over the place. We don't know how that's going to play out, but I suspect he's going to need a strong season to earn the big extension that he wants. And I have a little bit of a tough time with his current value. He is going, at wide receiver 23 is a lot. That is a pretty high value for a player that is clearly the number 2 on the team. He can win you a week, but he also can be relatively uninvolved on any given week. So I think it's a bit, high risk, but high reward, and a player that, while I do like now, I didn't at first. It's taken me a long time to come around on Jameson Williams, given the way he started his career in the NFL. But I see it now. He obviously has the speed factor, but I think he's still a little bit overvalued. Not by a lot, but I don't love the current price tag on him. I think there's a lot of good receivers that you can get in that same range. And so I'm just a little bit hesitant with Jameson Williams for this upcoming year. If you're looking for a bench stash, players that you might be able to start in a pinch with an injury, I think Tim Patrick falls in that category. He's essentially free. You can get him off waivers or throw him in as a nothing add-on in a trade. Isaac Tesla is a guy that I think is more of a pure 2026 type of play. I don't think he's going to do much as a rookie, but certainly is someone that, should there be an injury, or if Jameson Williams heads elsewhere in terms of his contract status, then there's a spot where Tesla can move into the lineup and be more of a true fantasy relevant player. But I think best case scenario, if you're a manager of Isaac Tesla, you're looking at, he's behind St. Brown, he's behind J-Mo, he's behind Laporta, he's behind Gibbs, behind Patrick. I mean, we're talking like the 6th guy in line for receptions. So I don't think that's going to do much for you. But again, as a stash, makes a whole lot more sense. And then I mentioned Sam Laporta. I think he'll be solid and steady. I don't know that Laporta really has tight end 1 overall potential in him anymore. I think that was a really awesome kind of 1-year deal that we got with him as a rookie. Not to say that he's going to be bad by any means. He's still going to be a top 5 tight end in terms of his dynasty value, but I think his overall finish at the position is probably going to be more in that 3 to 6 range on a yearly basis. I just don't think he is quite as good or important to the offense as Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. So there's a good gap between Laporta and those 2 players. All right, so moving on to the Green Bay Packers. And Jordan Love leads the way at quarterback. He's QB number 12 on Keep Trade Cut, number 34 player overall. Josh Jacobs at running back. He's the running back 14. and 65th player overall. Marshawn Lloyd is back after injury, entering his second year as running back 59. Emmanuel Wilson, running back 89. He's there still too. So solid running back room. But it's the receiver room here that is just a huge, huge question mark. Jaden Reed, wide receiver 44, 112 overall. Matthew Golden is the wide receiver 32 and 91st player overall. Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 71 and number 210 overall. Dontavian Wicks is the wide receiver 81 and wide receiver 240. Christian Watson is still there, although he's going to start the year on injured reserve. Wide receiver 77 and 231, overall. And Savion Williams, third-round pick, coming in at wide receiver 90 and number 269 overall. And then at tight end, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Kraft, the tight end number 8 and 101st player overall off the board, with Musgrave going over 100 spots later at 222. So the Packers, to me, are one of the biggest question mark teams in the entire NFL. Not because I don't think they have talent or a good coaching staff or anything like that. It's just there are so many players that are good but not elite, but not bad. You don't really know what you're going to get. They're stuck in a really tough division. We'll do some division. We'll do my division prediction at the end of the show, but it's an uphill battle this year for the Packers to either win the division or make the playoffs. I think this is probably the best division in football. I think, you can make an argument with the AFC West as well, but certainly this is the best NFC division, and there's going to be some challenges. I've talked about Jordan Love as a player that I think is a little bit overrated. I think he's a good but not elite quarterback. I think he is a little bit hurt by the lack of weapons, but I also don't think he's a good enough player to turn average weapons into being an elite player. So it's kind of which one matters more. I think there's certainly a bit to both, but I don't love the receiver room. I don't know who to take here. Frankly, if I'm going to draft, whether it's Dynasty or redraft, if it's a redraft league, I'm staying away from everyone. I'm not touching a single one of these players unless you get to, one of the final rounds and you want to take an absolute flyer on someone. To me, Tucker Kraft is the guy that I'm most interested in of the pass catchers. I think he can be an upper echelon tight end, certainly a top 10 guy at the position. And I liked a lot what he did last year. He was a player that we were in on kind of before the masses last year that we were able to get right. And but Christian Watson, on the other hand, was a player that I did like a lot last year, and he was a bust. So, one win, one loss here with the Packers in terms of my track record on them. But this year, with the current values on these guys, the two receivers that I am far more interested in, at least on a 2025 basis, are Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks. They're ranked so low that you can get them both for very cheap. A third-round pick in Dynasty, I think, would get you either one. And Wicks is a guy that gets open, right? That's been his whole thing. He gets open at an elite rate, but he can't catch the ball. So obviously some big problems there. If he can just figure out his hands and somehow turn them into, NFL wide receiver hands instead of a pair of bricks, we'd be great. He could be a really, really good wide receiver. But whether he can do that, I don't know. But at wide receiver 81, I'm fine with taking that shot. Romeo Doubs, I think, has a really good chance to be a starter on the outside. And his value has really dropped. And he could end up elsewhere as a free agent after the season. So, there's some intrigue there as well. I think he's more of a steady option. I think Doubs is certainly a safer play. You have a better chance of getting some startable weeks from Doubs, I think, than you do Wicks. But Wicks has the wider range of outcomes where he could be a really good player or just a colossal bust. Matthew Golden certainly has the potential, first-round rookie. I'm not a huge fan. I don't don't have an issue with the price tag, though. I think he probably should be valued the highest of this group of receivers. Jaden Reed is just your classic boom bust type of guy. Christian Watson at this point is just a stash on IR. In one league, I was able to get him off waivers and add him straight to my IR. If you have him rostered and you haven't gotten rid of him, you should. If you're on Sleeper, he's listed as being on IR already, so you can go ahead and move him to your injured reserve, and just opens up an extra bench spot for you. And then Savion Williams, to me, is kind of the ultimate wild card. 3rd-round pick. He can do a lot with the ball in his hands. He's more of an after-the-catch kind of guy, but he's a big receiver as well. So we'll see what kind of role he can add. Maybe he turns into more of a red zone threat. But to me, it's a whole bunch of question marks at wide receiver. It's truly a mystery box, and someone you would think has to work out and be decent. But that's what we said last year, and look what happened. So with all that being said, Josh Jacobs is the true guy to have on this offense. I mean, he was a stud last year. I think he's in line to get another huge workload. He's being valued at, I think, a very fair price at running back 14 and 65th overall out of all players. And he doesn't really have a solid backup. I mean, Emmanuel Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd didn't excite me as a rookie, was hurt, barely played, pretty much spent the entire year watching from the sideline. So is he healthy? Is he going to truly maintain the number 2 role? What kind of future is there for Marshawn Lloyd? I don't know. Certainly is worth a stash, but this is Josh Jacobs all the way, and should be in line for another very good fantasy season. And we talked about Jordan Love. I want to throw out Malik Willis as well. If you were in a Superflex league in Dynasty, you should check your waivers and see if Malik Willis is there, because given Jordan Love's injuries last year, Willis came in, didn't play all that bad. And I think he's worth a stash on your bench in case of injury. He's one of the handful of backup quarterbacks that I think do make sense to roster before a potential injury. So I would go out and just check your waiver wire there. And same could be said for Luke Musgrave. He's probably still rostered given where he was drafted, but a capable enough backup that should Tucker Kraft suffer an injury, go ahead, see if he's on the waivers, just toss him on your bench and see if you can get lucky. And the 4th team in the division, the Minnesota Vikings, who had a very, very good 2024 season. New quarterback coming in, though. Sam Darnold is off to Seattle, and that means that J.J. McCarthy is coming in for his sophomore season, albeit his rookie season on the field, given the injury that knocked him out for all of last year. He is backed up by Sam Howell, who I think, again, like Malik Willis, is one of those high-end backups that I would be stashing on your roster if he's out there on waivers. Just given the uncertainty, having a rookie who did have an injury, and it's just an offensive system where the quarterback of this team is probably always going to have some good, solid value. So I think that stashing Sam Howell can make a lot of sense. J.J. McCarthy is currently valued as the QB 14 on Keep Trade Cut, the 42nd overall player. I think those are perfectly fine numbers for him. I do think he has potential to absolutely shoot up higher than that following the season. I think if things go as I expect, he will be a top 10 dynasty quarterback next year that you will not be able to get in the 4th round or 5th round of startups. But there is significant risk. So it is one of those true, you're going to be rewarded or it's going to hurt really bad, because come this time next year, J.J. McCarthy will not be going in the 4th or 5th round of startups. He is either going to be, a top 3 round guy, or he's going to fall back a few rounds, depending on how the year plays out, whether it's injury or poor play. I just don't think he's going to be in the same spot. He would have to be so average, so just mediocre average, good enough that you're not going, he's going to lose the job, but not flashy enough or strong enough to go, oh yeah, this is definitely the guy for the future. I just don't see that really as being a possibility. He's either going to be great or a bust. I don't think there's much of a middle ground here, at least in terms of where he's going to go in startups next year. So it's a true just take your shot and hope things work out with J.J. McCarthy. At running back, Aaron Jones is the running back 37. Jordan Mason, the new running back, is at running back 36. They're also back-to-back in the overall ranking. So Mason at 161, Jones at 162. Obviously a significant age difference between those two guys. Jones now age 30, Mason's down at 26. So that can factor in terms of the dynasty value, although I do expect that Aaron Jones will still remain the starter. I do like Jordan Mason a lot. I think that he's going to have some really solid value. I think he's a buy candidate right now, someone that I definitely would be looking to add to rosters. And he's going to be the goal line guy. He's going to have early down work. He's going to have goal line opportunities. And I think he's a reasonable player to acquire right now. And the cost has just been rising. I think word has kind of gotten out that Jordan Mason is in line for a pretty solid workload. So for those reasons, I have him definitely as a player to buy. And then Ty Chandler is still there. He's running back 106. He'll be the third guy in that room. And then the receivers. Obviously, everybody knows Justin Jefferson, number 2 wide receiver, number 5 overall player. Jordan Addison, the wide receiver 22, and the number 71 player overall. Jalen Naylor is there, wide receiver 116. Ty Felton, the rookie, wide receiver 105. And then Rondale Moore is now at the Vikings. He's wide receiver 129. So a couple, late round dart throws there in terms of who will take over that number 3 spot. And then at tight end, TJ Hawkinson, the tight end 7, 82nd overall, and he's backed up by Josh Oliver. And it's a really interesting group of receiving weapons. So looking at the wide receivers and the tight ends, Justin Jefferson obviously is going to be great. He's elite. He was awesome with Sam Darnold. He'll be awesome again with J.J. McCarthy. I have no doubt about that, assuming he's healthy. I think that Hawkinson will maintain his status as a solid, but not, he's not going to be a top 2 or 3 tight end, but certainly a top 10, top 12 guy, somebody that should finish, somewhere in that 4 to 9 range. I mean, he's going to be good, right? I don't think anybody thinks that Hawkinson is going to be terrible or anything like that. Whether he has tight end 1 or 2 in the arsenal anymore, I don't really think so. Some of that is about his talent level. Some of it is just due to the fact that I think we're locked into Bowers and McBride at 1 and 2 for the next couple seasons. But to me, the more interesting players on this offense, in terms of boom, bust, how they're going to do, that sort of thing, Jordan Addison is a really interesting player. He was a player that I think was a little bit overvalued a few weeks back, just because there is that issue with the quasi-rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, Jefferson is going to get fed. The running game, is probably going to get a lot of work. I would expect Aaron Jones to still catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. Hawkinson very well could be the number 2 target, which could reduce Addison's role a little bit. His fantasy success has been largely determined by touchdowns. So if he can maintain his status as a red zone threat, then his current price at wide receiver 22 will be worth it. I'm a little bit skeptical, but at the same time, I could see his yards going up a little. So he's really a true question mark for me. I don't think his value is awful by any means, but a couple spots higher than what I would like to see. He's going back to back with Jameson Williams. So Williams is number 23, Addison's number 22, and I think they're both very interesting players, but I think it's a couple spots too high for each guy. Just a little bit too much up in the air for me and my comfort level. But certainly could be great, especially if J.J. McCarthy is as good as I think he will be. But if J.J. McCarthy is a really good quarterback, there's probably going to be a third receiver on this offense that is at least worth putting on your roster as a stash. Jalen Naylor is there. Rondale Moore has a little bit of intrigue given his history as a second-round pick. But to me, this is a good shot to a good place to take a flyer on a rookie, and that's Ty Felton. he was a day 2 pick out of Maryland, and he's a deep threat. He's a speed guy. He's someone that, if Jordan Addison gets suspended for the off-the-field issues that arose a little while back, could end up with a few weeks of relevance. Certainly will have an opportunity on this team. And if McCarthy, of course, is great, there is room to have a third receiver that is worthwhile. So Ty Felton, I think, is a worthwhile roster stash. He's probably on your waiver wire. He wasn't drafted in most rookie drafts. He wasn't even picked up as a free agent in a lot of leagues. So check your waivers. If you have the roster spot, go ahead and throw him on there. I would keep Felton over Naylor or Rondale Moore. And so if you're, trying to take a guess on who could be the third guy, that would be mine. And then, of course, you're rostering Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, Hawkinson, all the other receivers. It's really just a matter of who's going to be wide receiver 3 on this team. And I'll take Felton as my lottery ticket. All right, so now that we've made it through the entire division, I want to give you my buy, my sell, my sleeper, and my breakout for the NFC North. I'll start with my buy candidate, and it's going to be Roschon Johnson, running back 58 on Keep Trade Cut. I talked about the opportunity in the Chicago Bears backfield behind DeAndre Swift. They need someone that can be more of the grinder compared to Swift, somebody that could take over the goal line role. And I think if you want to take your shot on Kyle Monangai, you can do that as well. But to me, Roschon Johnson, a little bit more established. The team did not take a running back early in the draft. And I just think his price right now is really solid. You can get him for a 3rd-round pick and maybe even less. There's probably a lot of leagues that you can get him for a 4th. Or again, if you work out another deal that's a little bit larger, but you just want somebody tossed in, this is another perfect guy that fits that type of scenario to help get a deal done. So Roschon Johnson is my buy. In terms of my sell, I'm going to stay at the running back position, but go to the Detroit Lions, where I'm going to go with David Montgomery. He was on my list a few weeks back for this as well. He's the running back 23, and this is more of playing it safe and getting out before things go bad. This is not, I think David Montgomery is bad. That is not the case at all. I just think that there is risk given the change at center, change in offensive coordinator, the breakout that we saw from Jahmyr Gibbs. I think this could be a situation where this is turning into the Jahmyr Gibbs offense, and Montgomery will have contingent upside in case of injury to Gibbs, and vice versa. But you can still get a really good player in return for David Montgomery with being valued at the RB23. You can use him to move up for one of these first-round rookies that are going in drafts, like a Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey. Even further up if you want to go for a Judkins or a Travion Henderson. I think using him and a pick to go get Travion Henderson could be something that makes a lot of sense. Or even a veteran. I think there are veteran guys that are going in the teens in terms of where they're being ranked at running back that can make some sense to target. So I would be using Montgomery to one of two things. Either if you're entering or you think you might be entering a rebuild, see if you can snag a late first-round pick from somebody. It might be a bit of a tough sell. I think he's really being valued more like an early second. But if you can talk your way into a first, or use him with, another draft pick if you are a contender, and try to tier up at the position. I don't want to say necessarily use him in a first, but David Montgomery plus a second can probably get you a really good player. So I would just scope things out, see what you maybe can get done before things potentially go bad, because he's still, between the changes on the team, there's still the issue with age, and he's, starting to get close to that cliff. And I'd rather get out a season too early than a season too late. My sleeper is going to be Ty Felton. So again, wide receiver 105. This is the player on the Vikings that I mentioned I would take my shot on as the potential wide receiver 3. Is he someone that you're going to be able to throw into your lineups? I don't know about that. But is he someone that will see a rise in his dynasty value if he does take that wide receiver 3 role. Absolutely. And he could turn into something down the line. So from a sleeper perspective, where I'm trying to look pretty far down, I'm not going to list anybody that's already being thought of as a true fantasy starter, obviously, on this list. So, but Ty Felton is a deep sleeper that is going to be available in most leagues, whether it be waivers or you can acquire him for almost nothing. And so I think that's worth the risk there. I don't know that I would trade any picks for him or anything like that, but maybe work him into a small deal or check your waivers. Because again, I truly think he's going to be on a lot of waivers across leagues. And then my breakout for the year is going to be J.J. McCarthy, QB 14. I've talked about him a ton throughout this year as a player that I like. I loved him last year coming out as a rookie. I drafted him all over the place. I still am a believer despite the injury. I think that this Kevin O'Connell offense is really, really strong for quarterbacks. We've seen over the years, whether it be Darnold or Kirk Cousins, have elite fantasy seasons. And I think that J.J. McCarthy has more talent than Sam Darnold. So I think he can take a step and be a QB1 in fantasy football this year. So that to me would absolutely make McCarthy a breakout. I think he's one of the biggest wild cards in the entire NFL in terms of the impact that he will have on his team, on the division, on the league as a whole. Because if he is a good player, the Vikings, again, look like a strong playoff contender, whereas otherwise things are looking very, very different for Minnesota in 2025. So there you have it. J.J. McCarthy as my breakout. And let's finish off today's show with a quick little division standings prediction, just like we did last year. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I want to say I did pretty well with those division preview predictions last year this time. So, in first, winning the division, again, I do think will be the Detroit Lions. I think they're the most complete, well-rounded team. I think that they will be back with a home playoff game and should be conference, Super Bowl favorites. That the whole 9 yards, I think, stays the same with Detroit. Certainly a team I would expect big things from. Although they do have a very, very difficult schedule, one of the toughest in the entire league. So while I do think they'll win the division, I don't think this is going to be a 15-2 team again. I think you're looking more like 12 wins, maybe 11. So a slight step back in terms of record, but I think this division is going to eat itself alive. It's going to be, I think you're going to get at least 3 playoff teams from the NFC North, and it would not shock me if all 4 made it, which is crazy to say, but who's to say that, Detroit wins 11 games, and you got 2 other teams at 10 and somebody at 9. I mean, just a true, everyone splits their division games, that sort of thing, beats up on everybody else. I think it's absolutely something that's a possibility. So, but Detroit, I'll go with them to win the division. I'll go with Minnesota to finish number 2 again. I do believe in J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, the rest of the team was very strong. A lot of that carries over, and I think it's going to be an upgrade at quarterback, despite maybe a couple of growing pains the first few weeks of the year. And then I'll go with Chicago in third. I think we're going to see some nice improvement from the Bears with Ben Johnson. I think Caleb Williams will take the next step, and I'm a bigger fan of their offense than Green Bay, and I'll obviously then go with Green Bay in 4th place. I'm just a little bit more skeptical of the offense. They, another good team, of course, from the playoffs last year, but I think the Bears are going to catch Green Bay, and the Packers will round out the division in 4th place. So there you have it. There is our first full division preview episode of the summer. We will keep things in the NFC again next week. Maybe we'll head to the NFC South, and we'll preview all the teams again, give you a buy, a sell, a sleeper, and a breakout for the division as a whole, along with my rundown of each team and their depth chart. So, reminder, download Fast Draft, use code WARROOM when you sign up. And then once you play and you enter a draft, you will get a deposit match up to $50, depending on how much you put in. So go use that today on Fast Draft with code WARROOM. And check back next week so you don't miss any more divisional previews. Thank you all for listening. This is the Dynasty War Room podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we'll talk to you all next week.